Hi, I'm Julie Battle. I'm a nurse midwife practicing cannabis medicine, and this segment is being recorded, but I'll be available live to answer any questions you have. Hi, I'm Julie Battle, a nurse midwife working in cannabis medicine, and today we're going to talk about our endocannabinoid system and endometriosis. I use women and people interchangeably in my talk in an effort to be inclusive of all people who might be seeking information about endometriosis. Endometriosis is a chronic, painful, inflammatory condition where the cellular lining of the uterus or endometrium migrates to other organs and tissue in the pelvis and abdomen. These lesions are guided by estrogen. When estrogen falls in the menstrual cycle, these cells break down and shed. This blood doesn't have an exit route and thus stays in the tissue, causing inflammation, pain, scar tissue, and adhesions. The clinical hallmark of endometriosis is diffuse, poorly marginalized pain. We know that some endometriosis lesions actually form their own sensory and sympathetic nerve fibers that heighten the pain response. Although the clinical hallmark of endometriosis is diffuse, poorly marginalized pain, suffering is the true hallmark of this condition. We know that psychological distress and fatigue amplify pain perception, and it also impacts self-esteem and relationships, worsening the pain experience. The precise cause of endometriosis is unknown. There are several pathways involved. Many scientists think in part it's due to retrograde menstruation, which is reverse flow through the fallopian tubes during menstruation. International research indicates that many suffer with pelvic pain for as long as 12 years before getting the correct diagnosis. More than half of all endometriosis patients have been told by healthcare providers that there's nothing wrong with them, compounding the suffering. Approximately a third of patients have fertility-related issues, and more than half experience pain with intercourse. There is likely lack of research in this area due to gender bias in drug and medicine research, but we'll get to that in a bit. Research in endometriosis remains underfunded and has such few improvements in diagnosis and treatment over the past decades. Besides pain and suffering, endometriosis has public health implications. Endometriosis affects approximately 10% of the reproductive age population, with about 2 million women worldwide. $22 billion was the estimated attributed cost to endometriosis in the United States in 2002, almost 20 years ago. It is thought to be responsible for 50 to 80% of chronic pelvic pain, and reported annual direct cost associated with endometriosis per patient was thought to be $2,801, again, in almost 20 years ago. There is no known cure. As an understudied disease, effective treatment is limited. The current treatments include hormonal therapy, including IUD, progesterone-only IUDs, like Mirena, Liletta, and Skyla, as well as progesterone-only oral contraceptive pills, androgenic hormones like danazol, and GnRH agonists and antagonists. Surgery has fertility-related concerns and often provides only temporary relief, as approximately 50% of the cells regrow. And there's pain medications like nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories with the inherent COX-2 inhibitor gastrointestinal issues, as well as opioids, and we know about the risks inherent there. This is not new. We are able to see through historical writings from all over the world, literally throughout time, that humans have suffered with heavy, painful menses with dysuria and dyspareunia and generalized pain related to the menstrual cycle. In Western modern medicine, endometriosis has been described for over 115 years. Still, we remain without a clear understanding of this disease. This slide shows a photo of late 19th century medicine distributed in America for menstrual cramps that contains cannabis. as well as capsaicin, raising the possibility of synergism of cannabinoid and TRPV1 vanillin receptors. The concept of clinical endocannabinoid deficiency was first proposed by Dr. Ethan Russo in 2001, later refined in papers 2004 and 2016. The hypothesis is that all humans have underlying endocannabinoid tone, which is a reflection of endocannabinoid levels and the state of cannabinoid receptors, and that certain conditions, whether present from birth or acquired later, where endocannabinoid tone can become deficient and lead to various ailments. The ECS is our internal biolipid signaling system that strives to achieve homeostasis in our bodies. Akin to the way neurotransmitter deficiencies can be linked to other conditions, such as a decrease in dopamine in Parkinson's, acetylcholine in Alzheimer's, and serotonin in depression, although, of course, these are more complex than that. We know that the endocannabinoid system interacts with mechanisms associated with pain establishment, such as inflammation, cell proliferation, cell survival, and apoptosis. We have proof of concept that a dysregulated endocannabinoid system is at least partially responsible for endometriosis. We know that endometriosis tissue has fewer CB1 and CB2 receptors than regular endometrium. We know that fewer receptors decreases the natural apoptosis, or normally occurring anti-proliferative programmed cell death. When this isn't occurring as it should, it allows endometrial cells to spread and multiply. A cardinal feature of clinical endocannabinoid deficiency is overlap with other comorbid CED diagnoses. We know that nearly 95% of those with endometriosis also report at least one concurrent diagnosis, such as migraines, IBS, chronic fatigue, and fibromyalgia. Here we see ways that the ECS has interactions with three categories of interconnected and complex pain in endometriosis. We can also see how the ECS is emerging as an important factor in endometriosis development, maintenance, and pain mechanisms. The three kinds of pains include nociceptive, where lesions can cause mechanical nerve compression; inflammatory, which is spontaneous hypersensitivity to pain that occurs in response to tissue damage and inflammation; and neuropathic pain that is associated with damage to neurons, resulting in pain signals sent to the central nervous system, generally described as shooting or burning, and often chronic. We know worldwide that women are successfully using cannabis for symptoms of endometriosis. Strain Print, a Canadian company, has started a clinical trial with an Israeli research group to develop a product formulation to treat endometriosis. There are also currently at least 2 clinical trials underway researching how phytocannabinoids from the plant can help treat and prevent the growth of endometriosis. Contrary to what many believe, there's actually a growing body of research on the ECS and endometriosis. Please see my resources at the end of this talk. There's actually too much to cover in this time, but here's a table summarizing the mode of action of various cannabinoid ligands and their effect on endometriosis currently being considered for study. I don't mean to imply there is a simple cause and effect theory at work. Caution is warranted in interpreting all preclinical research. The ECS is a highly complicated lipid signaling system, and new science is emerging daily. There have been at least 3 calls to action by clinical bodies to improve the state of science on endometriosis. Stigma surrounding the disease and societal normalization of women's pain continues to stand in the way of accurate diagnosis and effective treatment. It's an international embarrassment that a condition that negatively impacts millions of women physically and emotionally remains deeply underfunded and under-researched. It will be years before there's robust clinical data to support the use of cannabinoids to decrease the sizable burden of endometriosis in our sisters. And as we know, It will likely be a decade or more after that before this overwhelmingly safe botanical compound makes its way back to its rightful place in our pharmacopoeia. For now, I'd like to share some implications for practice. We do have many reasons to believe that cannabis is helpful for pain, as well as anti-proliferation or decreasing the spread of endometriosis tissue. Endometriosis is many things to people living with it. I personally, in my practice, haven't found a single approach that has worked for all. Like all cannabis medicine, it's trial and error approach that is aided by thorough note keeping. Currently, unfortunately, what kinds of cannabis people can access differs and is often restricted by location. In my experience, CBD is always part of the puzzle with endometriosis. Some folks do fine with CBD alone. Many need some THC with the CBD, but not exceeding a 1-to-1 ratio. Suppositories are very often helpful. They can be either vaginal or rectally administered, but keep in mind that cannabis oil can degrade latex for contraception issues. Many of my endometriosis patients make their own suppositories. I have a recipe linked to this talk for interest, and as well as topicals seem to work very well, again, CB dominant. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm now going to come on live in the Q&A, and please feel free to reach out with any questions.